Hello and welcome to Fork in the Road. This is Rusty Gaylord. I am your host and happy to have you with us. Fork in the Road is a conversation with interesting, successful, smart trailblazers who have gone off and done something interesting in their life. And it's fundamentally an exploration of how they got there. A fork in the road. What are the decisions? What are the changing points in direction that took them to where they are now? I'm very happy to have Patricia Fripp with us today. Patricia, who's known as Fripp to her friends, has had a fascinating career and has spent the last multiple decades as a presentation expert, as a speaker, and helping others to become better speakers and more influential in their communication. So I'm very happy to have her and hear her fascinating journey to this point in life. So welcome, Patricia. Welcome, Fripp, to join us here on Fork in the Road.
And of all the interviews that I've had, I really enjoy your point of view because we live so many decades now where we're active and productive, redefining what retirement used to be, that we probably have multiple forks in the road. It's a very interesting concept, and thank you for inviting me.
Oh, well, I'm glad to have you here. We had the opportunity to talk a little bit before this, and one of the things that stood out to me is that you're willing to go where others are not. And, if you go all the way back to the beginning, coming to the US, some people listening may notice you have a bit of an accent. So tell us about how you came to the US, especially when you didn't know anyone here or didn't even know people who had been here before.
I grew up in England at a time when people didn't expect much of girls. And I realized at age 12, my brother is brilliant. He was always top of the class. For me, I was about halfway through. And I thought I'm probably more artistic than academic. And at age 12, I decided I was going to be a hairstylist. That was a superb move. I obviously had some talent. However, I had the ability to develop relationships with people I'd never have the opportunity to meet because I worked in posh salons. And when I was quite young, my best friend and really my inspiration, a couple of years older, said, I'm going to go to America and meet my pen pal. And I said, oh, wait till I finish my apprenticeship, I'll come with you. Well, we went on a double date and my hero got married. What an inconvenience. So I left home at 18 and went to live on this island off France, Jersey. It was British. I could get home in 30 minutes. It was a great first step. However, in the back of my mind, I always had the idea of going to America. Of course, at that time in history, a lot of British people didn't go to America. They weren't cheap vacations, and it was still close enough to the end of World War II. Even, a couple of decades later, people were still recovering. They didn't have a lot of money for that type of vacation. So I met two people. However, I knew America by the movies. I knew everyone in America was rich and the streets were paved with movie stars. And I went to London. I got a visa, sponsored myself, only to discover a week later they changed all the rules and I would never have got in. So I turned up in San Francisco because everyone I spoke to, even those who'd never been here, said, oh, you're going to America. San Francisco is the best place. So I turned up, checked in the YWCA, and the first day I went to see a gentleman I'd written to. My dad insisted, write to 4 salons and see if you could have a job. And one said, I can't promise you a job, but come see me. And that was in the Mark Hopkins Hotel. He took me to beauty school to get my license. And that was where my real working adventure began. Because I discovered, Rusty, that hairdressers in America get 50% commission. No sick pay, no guarantee pay, no vacation pay. And I was a worker. And my boss had never seen anyone who worked like me. And by the time the novelty of being in America wears off, which takes a couple of years, I never had time to be homesick. Everything was such an adventure.
Well, so
Nothing went wrong. It
yeah.
never occurred to me it would, and it never did.
Well, so I'm really curious because as you talk about this, that one of the themes that comes up for me is thinking outside the box, right? You just described growing up at a time when people weren't really traveling, right? They were recovering financially and emotionally from World War II. And yet you had this idea to say, I'm going to go to America. And you wrote to this person, and then you show up and you're the hardest worker there, right? You've described earlier that everybody else takes a lunch break, and you're saying, why would you take a lunch break? That's when people are free to get their hair done. And so you work through lunch, again, thinking outside of the box. And I'm wondering how that thinking outside of the box, did that continue to be a theme for you in your creative approach to your career and to life?
I would never have thought of it that way. For me, it was just practical.
Hmm.
I don't know that I am that brilliant. The Fripps were very practical.
Mm-hmm.
I'll say that. And I thrive when the experience is new. Some of the happiest times in my life is when you have a new job, or there is something new and different about the environment. Now, if you said, do you like change? Well, I don't know. But somehow I have thrived with this new environment each time.
Yeah, that's great. Well, it's interesting, because I know I asked you at one point about all of the different ways in which your career has evolved, because there have been multiple steps. You just described starting as a hairdresser, and here you are now as a presentation expert, coaching and mentoring other people and teaching them, helping them to be more effective communicators. Well, that doesn't seem like it's hard to draw the line between A and B. So clearly you've had some steps. And yet at one point you said to me that you didn't reinvent yourself. There was just a series of evolutions and a series of changes. And I think that is such a practical approach, right? It's not like you made another big jump in your life, but you took the step that was in front of you.
I opened my own salon in the financial district. And that was a great education. From age 15, as a hairstylist working in posh salons, and then at the Mark Hopkins Hotel, we met people from all over the country and all over the world, and celebrities that you learn. I've always been very curious, and I'd always learn from my customers. And then in the financial district, I am asking some of the most brilliant minds in Silicon Valley, how did you get to be the top salesperson in your company? What did you do to your little company? The big company pay you millions of dollars for it. It was such an education. And because I'm very ambitious, I had friends in the Dale Carnegie class, and we joined Toastmasters. We took every seminar that we'd ever heard of. And I was traveling nationwide for a hair product company, delivering seminars for hairstylists about not only cutting hair, but how you market your business, which I was good at. And my executive clientele said, well, come speak to my breakfast club, come speak from my Rotary Club. Oh, can you speak at my team meeting? And what I discovered was after 2 free talks, people came in my salon, and I realized this was the least expensive way that I could promote my business, and certainly the most fun. And then, because I went to seminars and rallies, I heard about the National Speakers Association, joined a professional speaker who I'd had the pleasure of watching, was very kind to talk to me. And he said, you must go to the National Speakers Association convention. And I'm a great believer. If someone you admire and wish to emulate gives you advice, you don't say, how much does it cost? You turn up. And at that first National Speakers Association convention, when I thought no one's going to want to talk to me, I only talk to Rotary clubs and hairdressers, 2 situations appeared. One, I realized this is what I could do after my hairstyling career if I wanted another career. And second, I got discovered by a big time promoter who booked me to speak to 2,000 people on the same program with Dr. Robert Schuller, the minister from Garden Grove, who was one of the most popular speakers at the time, and some other famous speakers. So I like to think only in America and in the National Speakers Association. It's like getting discovered at the soda shop in Hollywood. For my little world, that's what it was. And I continue to use speaking to promote my business. However, I developed, I would leave my salon and go speak and come back, go speak for IBM, come back 7 o'clock in the morning, I'm cutting hair again. And then 7 years after my first NSA convention, I became the first woman president of the National Speakers Association. And that's when I left my salon, my staff took over, and I was a full-time speaker.
That's amazing. So I want to go back to this only in America, right? Because, some people will say that there's a lot of luck involved in that story. And I personally am not a big believer in luck. I'm a believer that I think you said it so well. When you find somebody you admire and you wish to emulate them, if they give you advice, you follow it. You don't question how much does it cost? Is it convenient? You don't do those things. You follow the advice that's given to you. And you put yourself in a position where you were seen and discovered and met people that helped you along in the next step of your journey. And I'm curious from your perspective, like, how do you see that? Do you see it as lucky? Do you see it as just following direction?
To a certain extent, I would say I have been lucky. Mm-hmm. I have been, perhaps we want to say, fortunate. I had wonderful parents that taught us to be independent. However, it was nice to know when I left home, if I was unhappy, if I was broke in America, my father could send me an airline ticket to go home. Mm-hmm. It was nice to know my personal pride from the day I left home, I never asked my parents for money. However, there's the security in knowing they were there. Mm-hmm. Luck, of course, comes when you put yourself in situations where it might happen.
Yes.
And I can say at that time in the speaking industry, there were very few established women. In fact, the gentleman who discovered me was the owner of a speakers bureau. And he used to often say to clients, would you consider hiring a woman? Well, I mean, that would be blasphemous now. But at the time, and a lot of people said no. And then it got to the point where companies, even male-dominated companies, wanted to prove they were modern thinking. So even though they had no female sales professionals, they felt we need to have the same message a man could give, but from a woman's point of view. So that was to my advantage. Mm-hmm. And then it got to the point where it was really the message, which it is now. It's more the message. However, of course, we are lucky to live in a time where more diversity is embraced.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, again, being willing to go where other people aren't, right? Being one of the first women speakers and breaking into that industry for sure. I also want to go back to something you mentioned earlier on in the conversation, which is reinventing retirement. You put the word retirement out there and rethinking that. And I'm curious, as someone who's been in the workforce for longer than I have, and who has
been alive.
Well, and you've been in a number of different industries, and you continue to think about that. How do you think about retirement? Is retirement, because so many people today think about retirement as the finish line, right? I'm going to get my gold watch. I'm going to walk out the door. I no longer have to work. I can do whatever I want. And I think that, for me, my conception of what retirement means has evolved, and I'm curious to hear how you think about it.
I might be in a slightly different situation than many. I have no husband by choice, no children by choice, no plants by choice, no pets. Now, that doesn't mean I don't like pets and little children, but it's other people's. The freedom to do what I like. When you have a job that is a job, then I can see you might want to retire from it, especially if you have a spouse and that you've always dreamed of getting a camper and driving around America. I can see that. I can totally understand it. However, when you have a job that you charge for, but you really, at my age, shouldn't need the money, let's face it. So it's a matter of it's mental stimulation. Again, like being behind the hairstyling chair, I have the opportunity to get to know and learn from brilliant individuals I'd never have the opportunity to meet. And they value my contribution to them. Remember, I grew up at a time when women were more judged by how they looked. Now, I'd like to think I do my best to keep it together. However, being judged for your competence is exhilarating, especially when, as a younger person, I didn't think that was true or really ever possible. Also, what I do for a living gives me a certain flexibility, so I can still have vacations and fun trips. And so much of my work coaching people is virtual that I can do it even in hotel rooms. So for me, as long as the phone rings or the email is full with requests, as long as I have the brain power to do it, I can't imagine a time when I wouldn't want to at least accept some of the opportunities.
Yeah. And, what I hear in there is a lifelong learner, right? You describe being curious, you enjoy learning from people, and you enjoy contributing. And, having an environment and structuring your life in such a way that you can continue to do that and have the freedom to do it in the way that works for you. I think that, for me, I think about retirement is fundamentally about freedom for most people. And if you structure your life in such a way that you have that freedom, even while you're still learning and contributing, that's, in my mind, the best of both worlds.
Freedom is the greatest richness. You often say, how much money do you have? So you need a certain amount of money for flexibility. However, to have a lifestyle around where you can, as you say, contribute and work is wonderful.
Has that been a theme throughout your life, that sense of freedom? I mean, I'm thinking about you describing, you clearly were a hard worker, very, high commitment to your work. And you described traveling somewhere, delivering a speech, coming back and showing up at the salon at 7 a.m. and having a full day of doing hair in front of you, which is tiring. That's a big commitment.
Oh, but all are tiring, but both were exhilarating. And when you talk about freedom, there has to be a reason I never chose to get married. When people, sometimes clients have said, oh, can we work out an hour, a year ongoing contract? I say, well, let's start with 3 months. There's a reason I never got married. Let's try 3 months. If we get on, then we can do 6 months. A year is too much of a commitment.
Yeah. I see. But so it sounds like it was a pursuit and it was something that you intentionally created or cultivated throughout your working life, that sense of freedom.
I probably never considered that when I was younger, especially with my own business. I would be in the salon. My first haircut was 7 o'clock in the morning and my last one was 7 o'clock at night. And then at weekends, I was traveling, demonstrating, teaching other hairstylists. So there wasn't a lot of extra time there. However, that in itself provided a freedom perhaps a little later on.
Yeah.
When I was working 7 days a week, I never felt deprived. I didn't feel I was missing anything.
Hmm.
Now, if you're married with children, you're going to work as many hours. It's just different.
Yeah.
Freedom is choosing the life you want and the flexibility to change direction when opportunities appear.
Hmm. I love that. Very well said. Um, I I would love to hear your thoughts on being a trailblazing woman in a new industry. What was that experience like for you as a woman? Where there were, as you just mentioned, your speaker's agent said, "Would you consider bringing in a woman speaker?" Right? Even to phrase the question in that way clearly speaks to a different time. What was it like for you, and how did you navigate that era of your life?
Well, again, you have to go back before that. Every little girl, and I am sure every little girl now, has similar advice from their mothers. That you will have to work twice as hard and be twice as good to be considered an equal with men. Now, when I was a little girl, that was true. It might still be in some environments, in some circumstances now. And being the practical person, I'd say, well, what's the point in complaining? Work at being twice as good. And because I had professions I loved, it wasn't difficult. When I was in America, from the Mark Hopkins Hotel, I went to work at what was the first fancy men's hairstyling salon. This was when gentlemen stopped going to the barber shop and they did something nice with their hair. And the real innovator in that industry was Jay Sebring, who was a Hollywood hairstylist, did all the movie stars' hair. Because Betty Davis said, you could never take the film a male actor from the back because their hair looked so bad. Which maybe they got more FaceTime, I don't know. But Jay Sebring took over the salon I had just joined in the financial district. And I was the only woman stylist. And I remember a couple of men coming in, and when they discovered Pat was a woman, hearing them say, women can't cut hair. Come on. And to me, it was just, that made it so much exciting to be the most in-demand, solidly booked and best stylist in the salon. Mm-hmm. It didn't feel like a trailblazer at the time. I remember one of my clients from IBM, I was shocked when he said, but Patricia, women are considered a minority. I'm not, not long off the boat. That really surprised me. I didn't even know. Women are minority.
Wow. Well, I like the piece that you add in there about the practical element. There's no use resisting what is.
Yeah, exactly. One of my great friends, I don't know, it was Lou Ann Lindquist, but years ago she said, one of her techniques that I quote all the time, there's no point complaining to somebody who can't do something about your problem. And you all have friends, it's fine to bitch a little, but if you got a problem with your boss, maybe you should tell your boss. Right. Now, you've got to work out how do you say it. But that's it. If you can't change the way the world is, change how you fit in, are perceived by the world. At least you're a little part of the world.
Yeah. Well, I love that. It is right in line with my approach and what I do with all the people I work with. And we are nearing the end of our time together. So I want to transition our conversation just so that you can share with people the best way to reach you. I mean, you can tell, for everyone listening, Fripp is an amazing storyteller, an amazing communicator, and encourages people to communicate clearly and directly, whether it's with your boss or with other groups of people. So if somebody wants to learn more about you and what you do, what is the best way to do that?
Go to my website, fripp.com. I have got nearly 1,000 blog posts on presentation skills. You can send me an email. You can sign up for my newsletter. You can check out Fripp Virtual Training, which is my online learning platform on presentation skills. Fripp.com. You can go to YouTube and put in my name to my channel. So I am anywhere that you might try and put my name in a search. But Fripp.com is a great place to begin.
Excellent. Well, Fripp, thank you so much for being here on Fork in the Road, for sharing your wisdom, to sharing your journey, sharing your experience with us, and some of the forks in the road that you have encountered along this journey.
Thank you.